To think you would abandon our important patients to run off and save some old nabatas. What are you thinking, scum? I was shocked by the verbal abuse hurled at me by the director of the hospital. You're no longer needed here. You're fired, effective immediately. Pack your stuff and leave. I had just returned from a disaster deployment when the director suddenly fired me. My name is Jack. I'm a doctor in my 40s. I work in the neurology department at Lakeview Castle Hospital. I'm quite busy with seeing outpatients, attending to hospitalized patients, and training, among other duties. Furthermore, I'm part of a disaster medical assistance team organized outside the hospital. When a disaster occurs, I rely on my colleagues at the hospital to cover for me while I head to the affected area. This week, I went to a village isolated by a landslide and participated in a 3-day life-saving operation. I feel sorry for putting a burden on my colleagues. And on the morning of the 4th day, I returned to the hospital. Entering the consultation room, I found my colleague, Brown, and greeted him. Good morning, Dr. Brown. Thank you for your help while I was deployed. Hey, good morning, Jack. You must be tired coming straight from the disaster area. As I was handing over to Brown, Lily, an internal doctor, appeared from the corridor in the back. Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Lily. Since there are other doctors with the surname White, my colleagues call her Dr. Lily. She is beautiful and intelligent. Becoming the head of outpatient care at 34, she's the youngest to do so at our hospital. Good morning, Dr. Jack. You must be tired from the disaster deployment. Good morning. I'm sorry for the inconvenience I've caused everyone. Not at all. Dr. Lily smiled warmly. Disaster deployment is also an important job. Please keep up the good work. Thank you. Soon, it was time to receive patients, and we each entered our examination rooms. After the afternoon consultations were over, I stood up to eat a take-out lunch in the staff room. Then, my smartphone in my chest pocket vibrated. Looking at the display, it showed Director. It's rare for someone like me, a rank-and-file doctor, to get a direct call from the director. Putting the phone to my ear, I heard the director's secretary's voice, summoning me to the director's office. I hurried to the director's office, taking the elevator to the top floor. At the medical floors the elevator occasionally stopped at, the sound of medical equipment was noticeable. What could the director possibly want to tell me? My feelings were mixed. Director Williams is over 70 years old, but is a symbolic figure of this hospital. The fate of this hospital changes significantly under the director's leadership. However, lately, there has been simmering dissatisfaction among the staff regarding his management policies and personnel decisions. The door to the director's office appeared heavy and solemn. I took a deep breath to calm my anxiety and slowly opened the door. It's Jack. Did you call for me? Come in. The room was filled with a solemn air. The desk was overflowing with documents, and behind it sat the director, his fingers interlocked. He looked at me standing in front of the desk and began to speak. Jack, I hear you went to the landslide disaster area on a deployment. Yes, I was there for 3 days. I was informed that on the 2nd day, there was a scheduled appointment with Congressman Davis. Yes, that's correct. However, I had asked Dr. Brown to take over for me that day. The director's face reddened, and he spoke more forcefully. Jack, I appreciate your dedication to disaster deployment, but this time it's problematic. Congressman Davis, a VIP patient, had scheduled an appointment to see you. Leaving that to go on the deployment was a significant loss for the hospital. The director's eyes did not hide their stern reproach. I was almost at a loss for words. Indeed, I was aware of the VIP patient's appointment. However, many lives were at risk in the disaster area. That decision was obvious to me. Director, whether VIP or not, I prioritized urgency and necessity. My mission is to save lives. That's why I became a doctor. The director immediately frowned and retorted. Silence. To abandon our important patient and run off to help some old nabotas. What are you thinking, scum? I was shocked by the verbal assault unleashed by the head of the hospital. Old nabotas, scum, director, isn't that a bit much? I'm in charge of running this hospital. You're no longer needed. You're fired, effective today. Pack your stuff and get out of here. I don't clearly remember how I managed to finish the remaining work that afternoon. You're fired. Those two words kept running through my head, over and over, like an infinite loop. I couldn't believe the reality that I was suddenly thrown out of the place I had dedicated myself to for so many years. Still, I organized the medical records to ensure no disruption in treatment for tomorrow, and saw the ward patients. By the time I returned to the staff room, it was already getting dark outside. My hands were trembling as I opened the locker and gathered my personal belongings. From the desk drawer, a small origami crane given by a patient appeared. Remembering the words of gratitude from the patient, the feelings from that time surged within me. I am a doctor. But now, just an unemployed person. I took off my lab coat, threw it into the laundry bag, and put on my casual jacket. I sighed deeply. Dr. Jack. A voice called from behind. Turning around, there stood Dr. Lily. Why did it have to come to this? Though I felt heavy-hearted, I managed to give her the best smile I could muster. Yay, a lot has happened, but I don't regret going on the disaster deployment. She nodded, unable to hide her tears. But what will happen to the hospital without you? She grasped my arm, speaking with emphasis. Jack, we're here for you. We'll support you anytime. Thank you, Dr. Lily. You don't know how much that means to me. I gently released her hand and headed for the door. Dr. Lily, please take good care of the patients. Without looking back, I passed through the hospital's back door. Yet, I couldn't help feeling anxious about the unknown future ahead. The cold night air caressed my cheeks. No stars were visible in the sky. Just like my future direction, dark and uncertain. Dr. Jack, are you leaving now? Snapped back to reality by the sound of my name. I realized it wasn't someone from the hospital, but an old acquaintance, Johns, standing there. Johns seemed to sense something was wrong. Are you okay? Did something happen? I just nodded. Tears were streaming down my face. Johns sighed softly and walked beside me. We naturally headed towards the bustling streets, and Johns pointed to the red sign of a grilled chicken restaurant. How about we talk over some food? The inside of the restaurant was warm, filled with the pleasant aroma of grilled skewers. We sat in a booth, ordered beer, and some snacks. Johns looked at me, prompting me to speak. I got fired today. Johns was shocked. As I stared at the foam of my beer, finishing my story, Johns fell silent for a moment, pondering. There's a clinic on a remote island looking for a medical director. How about giving it a try? A clinic on a remote island. A completely different world from the urban hospital. A clinic on a remote island. I repeated Johns's words. Those words resonated somewhere in my heart. While nibbling on his grilled chicken, Johns continued. That's right, it's a small island, but the facilities are surprisingly well equipped. You could start something new there. A new beginning could mean new hope for me as well as for the patients in the community. Starting life on the remote island felt like opening the door to a new world. The white walls of the big hospital were replaced by white sandy beaches. The smell of disinfectant by the scent of the sea, and the urban noise by the gentle sound of waves. The clinic was small, housed in an old wooden building steeped in history. However, the previous director had been enthusiastic about introducing medical equipment, so the facilities were well equipped. From the first day I met them, the islanders welcomed me like family. The children ran around the clinic's garden, and the elderly shared their minor daily troubles with me. In these heartwarming exchanges, I found what I truly should be doing as a doctor. The place I found in my despair turned out to be the best clinic I could have imagined, and there, I saw someone familiar. Dr. Lily. She had come wearing a white dress and a straw hat, saying she was just on a little sightseeing trip, but behind her smile, I could see tired eyes. Rumors about Dr. Lily quickly spread across the island, saying things like, "A beautiful doctor from the city has come. Seems like the doctor's girlfriend has arrived," and both children and adults gathered at the clinic. In the calm of the evening, after work had settled, I invited Dr. Lily to the sea. "Is something wrong?" She took a deep breath. While looking at the shimmering water, she began to share the real reason. Unable to withstand the pressure from the director of Lakeview Castle Hospital, she too had left her position. "Since then, I've been job hunting, but it hasn't gone well." "What? How come?" "Dr. Lily is talented. It seemed like she would be able to find a job quickly. She had been carrying the anxiety of leaving the hospital, but sharing it seemed to bring her relief." The next day, I proposed to Dr. Lily that she work together with me at the clinic on this island. At first, she was surprised, but after some thought, she nodded with a smile. Dr. Lily's enthusiasm and natural communication skills brought a fresh breeze to the clinic. Not only the islanders but also people from neighboring islands came knocking on the clinic's door, having heard of her. Unlike in the urban hospital, here we could be more directly helpful to people. It felt like returning to the very essence of being a doctor. The clinic's management started to run smoothly, becoming an indispensable part of the island's community, not just a medical institution. On a clear night, the sky was lit with a pale moon and thousands of stars. Sitting on the seawall by the sea, Dr. Lily and I shared our stories of why we became doctors. As we listened to the sound of the waves, Dr. Lily began to speak gently. "I chose to go to medical school because I was strong in the sciences. My grades were good, so my family and teachers had high expectations. At first, that was the only reason." She paused for a moment, looking out at the distant sea. "I wondered if I had the aptitude. That was the only reason I chose this path." I was sitting beside her, dangling my feet towards the sea, listening to her, but when she fell silent, I started to share my story. My dad was a medic in a rescue team, like a pioneer in disaster medicine. Whenever a disaster struck, he'd fly to the affected area, leaving home for days. During major earthquakes, he couldn't return for a month. Dr. Lily was surprised. "So that's why you were so passionate about disaster deployments. Supporting disaster areas can be risky due to the possibility of secondary disasters, and I think it must have been exhausting." Dad always came back utterly drained from overwork. The wind from the sea strengthened, making the sound of the waves seem louder. "My mom always worried about my dad's job, but I've always respected him." Dr. Lily, holding her hair in the wind, turned to me and asked, "Is your father doing well?" "He's retired now, spending his days cuddling with the cat at home." We both laughed as I said this. She continued talking while placing her hands on the concrete of the seawall, looking out at the sea. "The trigger was my good grades, and that's how I chose my path. But once I started working as a doctor and began receiving patients' smiles and words of thanks, I started to see the significance of this job." I nodded, gazing at the twinkling stars. "I also became a doctor because of my dad's influence. But what truly makes me feel right about choosing this path are the encounters with patients." On the way back from the shore, she seemed burdened with heavy farts. Amid the sound of the waves, she started to speak hesitantly. Jack, actually, the director approached me with inappropriate intentions. Her voice was trembling. I was lost for words in shock. I couldn't believe such a thing had happened. I desperately refused him. But the director wouldn't give up, leaving me no choice but to resign. Then, he made sure I couldn't find re-employment. Hearing her confession, I felt angry and at the same time understood the enormity of the burden she had been carrying. That someone I respect so much had to endure such unjust treatment. Lily, the director's attitude must have been really tough on you, but you bravely refused it. You protected your dignity. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she quietly nodded and showed a slight smile. Yes, that's why I wanted to make a fresh start on this island. We then silently watched the night sky. Understanding her past struggles deepened my empathy towards her. And we resolved anew to support each other on this island and build a new future together. Then one day, an unexpected visitor showed up at the clinic. It was Williams, the director of Lakeview Castle Hospital. Rumors had it that after I was fired and Dr. Lily quit, the hospital lost its former patients and was in a critical situation. The director had come to the island intending to bring Dr. Lily back with him. The surroundings were getting darker, and it just so happened that it began to rain. Yes, a storm was approaching. Lily, what are you doing here? Come back to Lakeview. The hospital can't function without you. Under the rainy sky, the clinic's dim lights faintly illuminated the surroundings. William's tense expression became even more pronounced as it was wet with raindrops. His anger and urgency mixed with the heavy air before the storm. Dr. Lily and I stood on the clinic's porch, facing the director with the sandy beach behind us. Dr. Lily said to him, "Director, I found a new version of myself here. I won't be returning to Lakeview." When the director looked at me, his eyes were blazing with anger. However, my response was firm. Dr. Lily is now a valuable doctor at this clinic. She is important to the people of this island and to herself. Lakeview is no longer a place for Dr. Lily. You, director, are the reason for that. The rain grew stronger, violently hitting the clinic's tile roof. The director flinched for a moment but then tightened his wet coat. "Fine, but don't think this is the end. I'll use whatever means necessary to get Lily back." With that, the director spat out his words. In the midst of this, soaking wet, Johns appeared. I couldn't help but raise my voice. "Why are you here?" I whispered to Dr. Lily. "It's Johns, an old acquaintance." "I'm Johns, a medical journalist," he introduced himself. Johns exchanged greetings with Dr. Lily in a calm yet strong voice. Then, his gaze shifted to the director. "It seems things are not so calm, Director Williams." The director caught his breath. "And, Director, I've been following your misconduct for a long time." Dr. Lily and I couldn't hide our surprise at Johns's words. "These facts can no longer be hidden. I have all the evidence. I plan to report this to the media." The director turned to Johns and opened and closed his mouth 2 or 3 times. At that moment, the director's face seemed to contort. Then, suddenly, the director crouched down. I instinctively checked the director's condition. His left side was paralyzed. "It's likely an acute stroke. Hurry, get him to the clinic." We carried the fallen director inside and performed an MRI scan. I read the images and made the diagnosis. It's an acute phase stroke. He needs to be transported to a mainland hospital. However, the island was already isolated by the storm, and rescue helicopters couldn't fly. Therefore, we were forced to treat the director at the clinic. We administered intravenous thrombolytic therapy, but even after 3 hours, we couldn't dissolve the clot. I informed the director. "We can't re-establish flow with intravenous treatment." John stood in the waiting room with a grave expression. "I checked, but the rescue helicopter won't fly." The wind and rain were getting stronger. "Jack, just like you saved me once, please save the director too." There was a fervent look in John's eyes. "You found me under the rubble of a collapsed building that time and treated me. I have never forgotten that kindness." I made a decision. Endovascular therapy or catheter treatment might be the only way to save the director. However, Dr. Lilly opposed it. "But, with the facilities here, adequate monitoring is impossible. If it fails..." "I know, nearly 4 hours have passed since the onset. We're out of time. We need to re-establish blood flow through the blocked vessel as soon as possible." At my words, the director nodded. His eyes were filled with fear of the illness, but at the same time, it seemed like he trusted me. As the wind and rain beat against the clinic's windows, we started the catheter surgery. It was extremely challenging. The island's clinic didn't have a large enough X-ray machine suitable for the procedure. Still, I had my experience as a doctor and a strong determination to save the patient. Dr. Lilly, who served as my assistant, likely felt the same. And then, the surgery was over. I went out to the waiting room and spoke to Johns. The surgery was a success. The director's left side will fully recover from paralysis. After the severe wind and rain had battered the island. It rained for several days, but finally, a break in the clouds appeared. In that clearing, the director was discharged. He was able to walk again. On the clinic's porch, the director deeply bowed his head. Then, he got into the car with the person who came to pick him up. In his departure, the weight of lost time and regret was evident. We watched as the director's car kicked up dust and left. Johns' reporting sent shockwaves through the medical community. The director's misconduct was exposed, and the management of Lakeview Castle Hospital faced public scorn. Yet, perhaps the events of that stormy night had changed him. The director admitted his mistakes and announced his withdrawal from the hospital's management. On the day that news reached the island, Dr. Lilly and I were sitting on the seawall. The sea was calm, and a ship could be seen in the distance. "Jack, how long am I allowed to work here?" Dr. Lilly suddenly uttered such words. "It's okay, Dr. Lilly. As long as we are needed here, we can make it through," I answered while gently looking at her. She smiled softly and looked at the distant sea as if she had made a decision. Dr. Lilly quietly held my hand. That warmth stirred something inside me. A feeling greater than gratitude towards her slowly welled up. "It's good to be here," Dr. Lilly murmured. I could only nod in response. Though I couldn't put it into words, I too was satisfied. With her by my side, I was confident we could overcome any difficulty. The island's lighthouse began to shine. We returned to the patients at the clinic. The future walking alongside Dr. Lilly felt as bright and hopeful as these stars. The life of a doctor on this island will continue. And together, we will find new hope and grow. Under the quiet sea and the warm starlight, we seem to sense each other's feelings.